All right, guys, let's take a look at lesson number 1, which is all about finding the degrees of a monomial. Now, if you'll remember all the way back to our vocabulary early on, we talked about that the degree of a monomial is determined by the sum of the exponents of the variables. Now, if there's only one variable, that means that that's the only exponent, and so that's the degree of our monomial. So on these 4 examples they've given us, we need to identify the variables of the term first, add their exponents to determine the degree, and then just remember if there is no variable, then the degree is 0. So let's take a look at example A. So example A says 5x squared. Well, the only variable that I see is x right here. So the degree of the monomial is going to be whatever x's exponent is. Well, that is 2. So the degree of this monomial is 2. Because x was the only variable, the only exponent on it was 2, so that makes it the degree of the monomial. Now let's take a look at B. We've got -1/2 xy to the third. Now, when you look at that, you're probably recognizing that there are multiple variables. We've got an x here, and we've got a y here. Well, in order to figure out the degree of this monomial, we need to know the exponent of each variable. Well, the exponent of y is 3 because it's listed, but there is not an exponent listed for x. So as we've learned about in the past, we need to put a 1 there. So the exponent of x is 1. So in order to determine the degree of this monomial, we need to add the exponent of x with the exponent of y. Well, that would mean 1 plus 3, so the degree of this monomial is 4. All right, well, using that information we just talked about on A and B, I'd encourage you to try example C on your own, then check your answer with mine. So example C says 8x to the third, y to the third. You probably noticed that there is an x variable and a y variable, so we need to add their exponents to determine the degree. Well, the exponent of x is 3 and the exponent of y is 3, so we are going to add those, and we determine that 3 plus 3 is 6, so the degree of this monomial is 6. All right, well, I'd encourage you to try example D. This one's a little bit different, but see if you can look at some of the information in the instructions and determine the degree of this monomial. So example D says -3. Now, there is no variable listed, obviously, with that. We don't see any letters next to the -3. It's just the number -3. Well, if you look back up to the instructions and what I mentioned at the very beginning, if there is no variable a part of your term, then the degree is 0. So that means because there's no variable, the degree of this monomial is 0. All right, well, if you have any additional questions on how to determine the degree of a monomial, please feel free to do some research on that or ask. Otherwise, you should have what you need to continue on to lesson number 2.